Hello, everyone, and welcome to Co-Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about spiritual magic, law of attraction, and how to best enjoy this mysterious, miraculous journey we call life. My name is Collin. I'm a life coach, tarot, oracle card reader, and medium.
My name's Stephanie, and I'm a transformational life coach.
Much for listening to our podcast. If you're listening to the audio version on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, thank you so much. If you're watching us on our YouTube channel, we really appreciate that. If you feel called to like us or subscribe to us, we would really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. We appreciate your support as always. Each week here on Co-Creation Station, we discuss a different topic, and today we have decided to talk about a phenomenon called synchronicity. And so I think, Stephanie, you had the idea of how we're going to kick it off here. You were going to read the definition of synchronicity.
Oh, I am? Okay, I was reading it, and then I'm like, so give me an example of that, and then, okay, I'll read it.
Your
So
mic's a little hot, just to let you know. Your mic's a little hot.
which means,
Your incoming volume is up really high, and it's distorting a little bit.
okay, not sure if that's better.
Yeah, I think that
Okay,
sounds better.
okay. Synchronicity, the simultaneous occurrence of events which appear significantly related but have no discernible causal connection.
And then you asked
Synchronicity.
me,
And so I'm
what's an
like, okay,
example of that?
I go, well, give me an example. What is that like? Because I'm like,
Yeah, so I think what I've been taught, I don't know if this is an Abraham. Well, I remember a story from Abraham Hicks that she talks about, which is like they were in La Jolla, which is a part of San Diego where you live. And so I don't remember how it started, but somebody told them about like to think about butterfly. She was with her
she was
husband,
with a
Jerry.
client. She was with a client
Oh,
actually.
okay.
That was when. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm right on with what I think it is. Okay,
Yeah.
the definition kind of like.
Yeah.
So this
Told
was
her
back
to,
when
oh,
Esther
sorry.
was doing phone sessions,
Okay.
and
Oh,
she was
right.
with.
And this client of hers had a lot of doubts, so she told her to think about what was it? Butterflies, blue glass, and something else.
Feathers.
Feathers. Yeah. And the client didn't go for it.
Because she wanted Esther to give her a fortune. She was
Yeah.
thinking of Esther as a fortune teller, and
Yeah.
Abraham's like, we don't do that, like you
Yeah.
know. So
But the thing was that Esther had really focused as she was trying to suggest this to her client. She had really focused on. Oh
she
no, I'm getting this
wasn't.
wrong. I'm
No,
getting this completely
so
wrong. I'll
so
just let you take it from
when
here. Go
when
ahead.
when Esther is channeling Abraham,
Mm-hmm.
she's unconsciously present
Mm-hmm.
because Abraham's just kind of running the show, right? And
Right.
so Esther wasn't really aware of the conversation that was really going on with this woman. It
Mm-hmm.
was really between Abraham and the client.
Okay.
So they got done with the session, and then Esther and
Jerry.
Jerry, thank you, went to La Jolla to have lunch at their favorite restaurant. And as they're walking down the street in La Jolla, they see a gallery and they walk in, and Jerry's like, I want to go to the restaurant, and leaves Esther there. And she goes back into the back of she doesn't know why she's drawn to this room. She goes into the back of the gallery, and there's this wall of blue glass art. And it's like the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. She still doesn't understand what's going on. They go to the restaurant, they have a good time. Um, and then after the restaurant, they go walk down by the shore.
Mm-hmm.
I think over by the seal little thing there, and they're walking around, and all of a sudden she said they had to close their mouths because all of a sudden they were just all these butterflies came at them from all over them. They had to close their mouth for fear they might swallow one accidentally. So just
Mm-hmm.
butterflies, butterflies. And then they were on the grass, and then all of a sudden from afar this little Asian boy, he's got a feather in his hand, and he's like starts running over to Esther like he knows her, and they're like, what's going on? And he runs over to her and hands her a feather. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point she remembers and went, oh my God. So she had no resistance at all. It
Mm-hmm.
was just the seeds were planted about a feather, blue glass, and butterflies, and then these synchronistic occurrences, and she allowed in because she had no resistance whatsoever.
Yeah. So thank you for remembering that story really well, because obviously I didn't remember it well at all. I appreciate you saving me on that one. Yeah, so I mean, as I understand it, I first learned about the concept, I think, when I read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron,
Mm.
which is a book about kind of reclaiming your creative self. And what she talked about was when you're, I think as how she described it is when you're open and you have something that you want or something you focus on or something you think about. And again, when we say think about it, for me, what I've learned since is the thinking has to go with a feeling. In other words, like when Esther was thinking about those things, talking to her client about them, she was, I mean, who knows what exactly her emotional state was, but she wasn't in a state of resistance. She wasn't in a state of like anger or pain or sadness or blocking the energy of it. She was just
Right.
open.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just that she was thinking about them; it was also that she was sort of open and feeling good or
Yeah.
feeling at least
Yeah.
neutral
Yeah.
emotionally. And synchronicity happens when the universe brings that thing sort of to you. It enters your real, it manifests, it enters
Yeah.
into your real life experience.
Yeah.
And I think I started doing this thing really early on with it, which is because whenever synchronicity happens for me or anybody else, it's almost like we all say the same thing, which is like, it's something like, that's so crazy, or that's so
Yeah.
insane, or
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so nuts,
Oh my
or that's
God,
so,
really?
that is
Yeah.
so creepy, or that's
Yeah.
so weird, or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
what I started to say very early on, actually, just from more for myself to reinforce it, is that that is actually not weird, creepy, strange, insane, or nuts. That is actually how the universe is working 24/7,
Yeah.
365.
Yeah.
And it's just that those experiences, because you remember having the thought about the blue glass and the butterfly and the feather, and then you see it show up so visually, so viscerally, and so soon after you had that thought, it surprises people. And that's why we have this reaction of like, oh my god, it's so creepy, or oh my god, that's so nuts, because it seems like, oh, the rest of our lives nothing works that way, but then this one thing happened. And so to me, synchronicity is really like, it's a little bit of a misleading term, because it almost makes it seem like, well, this is something that only happens once in a while when you do like a visual meditation, and then it shows up later in the afternoon. And it's like, actually, synchronicity is, to me, it's just an explanation of the art of the law of attraction,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
we're putting out a vibration all the time,
Yeah.
and the universe,
Is responding.
like attracts like, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Exactly.
synchronizes with
Yeah.
your vibration, and it brings to you what you've been putting out.
And
Um,
there's no resistance, so therefore it happens.
right,
And there's allowing, and so it's
right,
always being given, but it's only our
yeah,
resistance that stops it or slows it down.
exactly.
There's something that came to me when you were talking about this, how, most people are like, "Oh my God." And I just thought, wow, what would life be like for me and you and others and the majority of people on the planet
Hmm.
if we expected that, believed it, that it was just natural,
Yeah,
and how different would our lives be? How
yeah,
much better would life be? How would it be different in a good way?
yeah. Well, that's,
Like,
I think there's an upside and a downside to synchronicity for me. And the upside is that it helps when I have those kind of experiences, like the one you described that Esther Hicks had. I've had like more of those than I can count.
I think most people have.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
more natural, it's just like we don't think about it.
Well, and also people, if they don't know about the law of attraction, the tendency is to brush it off as coincidence.
Yeah.
Um,
Or a
and this is another,
fluke, or that hardly ever
yeah, and
happens.
this is another area where I think it can get complicated if you let it, because there is a psychological phenomenon where, if you buy a new car and you buy like a red Mazda 3 or something, we'll just pick a random car. There's a psychological phenomenon where when you get on the freeway, you're going to see more
Yeah.
red Mazda 3s than you did
Right.
yesterday. And that
Right.
doesn't mean, in that sense, that there's more red Mazda 3s on the highway.
Yeah.
That means your attention, your
Right. Is on
brain
that.
is attuned to it. And
Mm.
as you scan your environment,
Yeah.
you're
I have
actually
a white car and I see them all. I
right.
have a
Yeah.
white Camry. I see them everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's not exactly what we're talking about, although I think it might be related. I think sometimes those psychological phenomena overlap with the law of attraction in an interesting way. But really what we're talking about is if you legitimately never see, like, I think a better example would be like a purple Ferrari. There aren't too many purple Ferraris in the world. But if you really sat at home and thought about purple Ferrari and had positive or
Or
feelings that made you
not,
feel
because
good,
that's what we're talking about, right? It was
yeah,
just like gently
or just a
planted. She
lack of
wasn't even,
resistance, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There
and
would one,
then
you'd end up seeing one that day somehow.
right, and of course now the next time I go out on the freeway, I'm going to see a purple Ferrari, but
Or in a magazine or in a movie, or
true,
who
yeah,
knows,
yeah,
you
yeah,
go to the store and a Matchbox. I don't even know if
yeah,
Ferrari's in those, but yeah.
yeah,
It could be any
yeah,
multitude of ways
yeah.
we think that, or I always think, well, it can either happen this way or this way. And the planet and the universe and everything is like, no, there's like 100,000 different ways that something could happen.
That's another really great point. So that's the upside of it for me, is that it reminds me, because I'm still, even though we do the podcast and we know a lot about this stuff, and I've watched The Secret like more times than I can count, I'm still learning. Like, I'm still repaving those neural
Neuro
pathways in my brain
pathways,
to
yeah.
remember that this is
Yeah.
actually how it works.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I was raised, like most people are, that's not how it works. So the
Right.
upside of synchronicity is it reminds me and reinforces those awarenesses or whatever in my mind, like, oh, this is how the universe works, right? you know
I
but the
like to,
downside of it is that it can make me think that it doesn't happen very often, which
yeah.
the reality is it's happening 24/7. It's just there are
Yeah.
times where I'm more aware of it because I've
Right.
been more intentionally specific with my
Yeah.
thoughts, my vibration.
Or just in tune,
Yeah,
you know? I
right.
mean, we're saying like, when you're saying it probably happens more often than we realize, I'm like thinking, I just started thinking like, wow, how many times is it happening that I'm not even realizing it's
That's another
happening?
part of it. Yeah.
Ooh, that is powerful.
Yeah, when we
Well,
notice it and remember it, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only thing that we thought about and then it's manifested. It's just that we happen to notice that one for whatever reason.
so I have a couple of stories because when you were
Yes.
talking about this, I was like, oh, this is like right in line. So
Mhm.
this week I was riding my bike quite a bit. And this time of year, oranges are really prevalent in the neighborhood for people who have orange trees. And I love fruit right off the tree. And so there's this one tree that's on someone's sidewalk. And I'd ridden by it a few weeks ago and there was one on the ground. I'm like, that one, I can have that one. And so I picked it up, brought it home, ate it for breakfast that morning. It was so good. So this week I was riding by there too, just kind of peeking, see if there was any on the ground. There weren't. And I was like, oh, shucks. Come home, have my day, go out, do whatever I'm doing that day. I come home that night and there is a large bag of oranges on my counter.
Wow.
And I'm like, where did these come from? And I asked my husband, I'm like, where'd you get these from? He goes, oh, Linda said to help yourself. And so there's all these oranges. And I'm just like, I wanted some this morning. And
Yeah.
they're delicious and juicy, and there's a whole bunch of them. And so I was like, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
And then, so I was telling you before our show today, I took a friend out to lunch on Friday, and we had gone to this place last year. And so we were ordering what we shared last year, but this time we were going to each have our own. And we get two sides, and so I wanted asparagus. And I asked the lady, she was telling my friend what the sides were, and she never said. She said Brussels sprouts. I'm like, you don't have asparagus? She goes, no, sorry. And I was like, okay, I'll have Brussels sprouts. But they were delicious, and I enjoyed my meal, and I ran some errands after my friend, and I came home, and literally like an hour after I got home, I hear my husband gets a call, and it's from our neighbor down across the street. And I just overhear him saying, "Oh yeah, you have extra? Sure, I'll be right over." And he usually buys like a big watermelon and shares some of it with us. So I'm thinking it's probably watermelon, right? And then one time he brought steak over, so I don't know. He comes back home within minutes, and I hear him open up the fridge. He puts something in there. I go, "What did he have for?" And he goes, "Oh, asparagus." I couldn't believe it. Uh, so I got my asparagus. So yeah, I was steaming them that night and drizzled some balsamic and olive oil and a
Now,
little
when you say
Himalayan salt.
you just said you couldn't believe it. What do you mean by that?
I was shocked. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I got what I wanted, and in a way I never. This goes back to that whole thing where I think there's only two options, or maybe three. How I think in my human mind, it's super limited. It's like in this box like this. I have these neuro pathways of like, it can only happen this way. I don't know how it can happen, so how can it happen?
Mm.
That's my story. And so yeah, and I was just like, thank you. It was so awesome because never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that he'd buy extra asparagus. Who buys extra asparagus? Like, and that it would come
Yeah.
from, yeah. So it happened so quickly in a way I didn't expect, and I got what I wanted. Like I wanted, and then this goes back to what we were going to talk about too, about happiness and appreciation. And I was
Mm.
having a really good time with my friend. I was feeling really thankful that I
Yeah.
had the money, that I could treat us both to this really
Well, I
nice
loved what you
lunch.
said about the Brussels sprouts too. Is you said you were disappointed when the server said that they didn't have asparagus, but then it was kind of a throwaway when you were talking about it. But I noticed it. You said, "Oh, but actually the Brussels sprouts are really good,"
They were
which means
delicious.
you didn't stay meditating on the lack of asparagus while you were eating the Brussels sprouts. You were in a
No,
place of like, "Oh wow, these
appreciation.
are really
Yeah,
good." Like you were
yeah,
feeling good about the
yeah,
Brussels sprouts, and
yeah, yeah.
the universe was like, "There you go. Here's the
Yeah,
asparagus."
yeah, and because I had such a good time, I was looking forward to being with a
Yeah.
friend. We got a really nice table by the water,
Yeah.
hanging out with a good friend, enjoying the food, and just talking and celebrating her. And my day just kept getting better and better.
Mm.
And came home tired, but also like, thank you.
Yeah.
And then this cute little thing happened, and I was just like, thank you. Like, look at that. Yeah, I got my asparagus after all.
Yeah, so they talk about this in The Secret, and again, I think it's one of these things where, like, when people criticize The Secret, they kind of forget that this is in The Secret. But The Secret has a whole section where they talk about appreciation and gratitude, and essentially, as I've come to understand it at a deeper level after listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks stuff, is that the good thing about appreciation and gratitude is it's a place most people can get. People understand what it is very easily. So you might be in a place in your life where you're disappointed or frustrated. You can't get there emotionally easily,
Yeah,
but you at least understand what it is.
yeah,
And so the easier it is for us to get to some place, I think, just like the more it helps us. So I think the thing about gratitude and appreciation is, for me, it puts me in a good feeling state. And even if even if I'm feeling down or frustrated about something, if I can I understand what gratitude and appreciation is. So I would say most often when I remember to do it and I think to do it, I can get there. And what it does is it puts me in a place that I feel good, because even if something frustrated happened to me, I think, you know what, I have an amazing apartment. I live in one of the most exciting cities in the world.
but can you
Um,
get there from there? Because I know Abraham talks about that. Like sometimes that's
yeah,
going from like A to B, where I need to be like, if I'm like in a bad mood,
yeah,
I can't get to appreciation. Like I need to
yeah,
like either go take a nap or go sit outside and drink some tea
yeah.
or put on some music. I don't know, something that makes me feel a little bit better.
Hmm.
But I can't go to appreciation right away. And I hear what you're saying. Appreciation is really a powerful tool,
Yeah,
but I can't always get there.
yeah.
So you can get there from being like
Well,
upset.
I think I totally agree with what you're saying, and Abraham Hicks does talk about this a lot, and I totally agree that if I'm like totally in a major depression, trying to get myself to be super happy is going to be a challenge I really shouldn't try to
Impossible,
take
right?
on.
Yeah.
Right, I'll fail. So at that point, she talks about trying to go from like depression to like anger to
Yeah.
frustration.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. But I think the thing about appreciation and gratitude is just mentally for me, I understand what I need to think to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's really just look around where you are, think about
Yeah.
things you already have in your life, think about things that
Yeah.
I've already received that are already miracles, that are already
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
This podcast, my
Yep.
friendship with you,
Yeah.
my apartment, my
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
none of these things that I
Your
like.
mic. I love your new mic.
My microphone, my fancy podcasting microphone.
I
So
love
far
it.
hasn't made any
I keep thinking of Howard Stern. Even your voice when we started. No, I love Howard Stern. Like, I know he's
Okay.
wild and crazy, but back when I
Yeah.
worked at the post office, I used to listen to
Yeah.
him and Robin a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I even mentioned to you earlier several months ago, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're like Howard Stern, and I'm like Robin. Not that your personality is like, but just, what we're doing here. But anyways.
Yeah, let's not have strippers as guests. I would like that
Oh,
to
we
be
absolutely will not. No, I don't. Oh my goodness.
unless
I
there's-
just mean. Let's pause for a second, because you went somewhere like I don't even think of when I think of them. I just think of the way they feed off each other, their relationship. That's where I'm coming from when I say
Yes.
those two, and
Yes.
that's about where it stops. Because our podcast is
We're gonna
about
have the thing is,
death.
we're gonna have guests on topics like yoga and all
Yeah.
sorts of different things.
And that's
We
in our
live
description. It's a spiritual.
Yeah, we live in Southern California, so there's no guarantee that we
Whew.
won't have someone who used to. Anyway.
Yeah, next. Sorry, y'all.
Anyway, I don't even remember what I was talking about now. But what were we talking about before you brought up the Howard Stern thing? Oh, gratitude. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, that's why it's easier. It's not necessarily easier emotionally, because if I am way far down,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard no matter what I do to get like way high up, and that shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah.
But I think what I mean is if I'm a little bit down, if I know I'm kind of like having negative thoughts, I'm not in a positive, good feeling place. It's very easy for me to just look around my apartment and go, look at all the blessings I have in my life.
yeah.
Look at all the abundance I've already received.
Yeah.
And then that way I go from sort of blocking things that I would like to bring into my life to allowing them into my life, because I'm not in resistance of like, oh, why don't I have a better car? I'm in like, wow.
Well, it
look at all the
feels
stuff I
better,
have.
right? It feels better. And then
feels
we're
better,
in a
right.
state of allowing. And then, it just snowballs from there. And when you were talking about appreciation and looking around, it reminded me a couple years ago, I started doing with a group the book The Magic from Rhonda Byrne.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in this group, and one of her days in there, because every day was a different thing that we would do, and one of the days is appreciation, being thankful.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, from the moment you wake up, everything you touch and you do, say thank you for it. Let me tell you, by the time I got to breakfast, I was like, I have to stop this game, because I must have said thank you. Like when I hit the floor, thank you for my feet. Thank you for my slippers. Thank you for my bed and my sheets and my mattress. Thank you for the good night's sleep. Thank you for my bathroom. Thank you for my view. And I must have said thank you probably 500 times by the time I got to, and I was like, I'm done. But these are things that I mean, think about, I would just go through my day and not even think about them, and they're there. And I thought, if they weren't there, the impact they would have on my life of not being there, and I just take it for granted. How many things do we take for granted? And so doing that practice that day I was like, oh, I have a lot to be thankful for. Wow, look at all the things. Like I have this stuff right here I love,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah, I had an
pencils.
experience on Friday morning a couple days ago where I was
love
on
paper.
this.
Sorry. I love my new mug. My
Um,
superfoods.
I was on this new app that's all the rage right now called Clubhouse, and it's a really fun app. And I won't go into all the different things about it, but essentially you're in a conversation, you're in a room with a conversation with a bunch of other people, and there's a topic, and this group that is actually, this isn't their like group purpose, but they like having off-topic discussions on certain days. So they were having a discussion about basically the question for anybody that came into the room was, what toys and games did you play with when you were a little kid? And
Ooh, I like that
there
topic.
just so happened to be, most of the people in the room were Gen Xers born in the 70s and 80s, like myself. And so people, I mean, I put my hand up to speak, to share my thing, but I was like the last person that came in the room. So I was the last person to share. And I mean, just listening to other people talk about these toys, and even some of the ones that like I didn't play with, like My
Mm-hmm.
Little Pony and Strawberry Shortcake and all these things, Garbage
Yeah.
Pail Kids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, like just other people. So somebody said at one point, somebody says, I've had a smile on my face this entire
Oh.
discussion. People are laughing as they share and everything, and like everybody, without exception, when they got their turn to speak, was saying like, this is the best conversation I've had in so long, and all we're doing is talking about toys and games that we used to play with.
Yes. I
And
love it. Love it. Love it.
um, I realized one of the things that I've been trying to incorporate into my life is like, I want to have more time for play, more time where I'm not doing things that are for some career or work related,
Yeah.
reason, even though the work that I do and the various ways I do it is really satisfying and wonderful for
Mm-hmm.
the most part. I feel like I'm a little bit of a workaholic in the sense I don't build enough play into my life.
Yeah.
And so we had that conversation, and then I met somebody, or somebody that followed me on Clubhouse, and I just got on. So I went on Instagram because Clubhouse links to Instagram, and thanked them. I just wrote them an Instagram message thanking them. And this person started talking to me about Dungeons and Dragons, which is a game I play.
Uh,
People who are really observant can see it behind the book. And we just had this whole conversation. And I'm an old school D&D player. She's completely new to it, so she was sharing her experiences about the new version that's out that she's playing with her friends, and I was sharing about the old version that I played with my friends. And it was, to me, that conversation wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been in this energy talking about games and toys, with these other people,
yeah.
which I didn't
Yeah.
even know I was going to have.
Yeah.
And then I allowed in a conversation that I really been sort of looking for. I wanted to start
I
talking.
love that you said I allowed in.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that first conversation, it just put me in this state where I was happy, I was smiling, I was laughing, and I didn't
Yeah.
have any specific um,
Agenda.
yeah, like I better have this today,
Yeah.
whatever.
How's that
And
working?
yeah. But can we I mean, I don't mean to go back to the goals thing, but
This
I feel like you have I want you to talk about this because I feel like you have a better handle
Well, we were
on than me.
talking about this
Is it,
before the podcast.
yeah, like I feel like it's okay if I say to myself, I do want a new car. Like I want a new car.
Yeah.
Or I want a new apartment, or I want to meet, a
A new
special someone
album
to have
for
a
my
relationship
band.
with. Or a new album for my band, which we were talking about right before the podcast.
Let's just be
Um,
real here, baby.
But like when and you and I were talking about this, when I get really specific, that can be not such a great thing because I get attached to, well, I want this specific thing, I want it by this specific time, I want it to be this, have these specific parameters.
Yeah.
And it's like there's times where that specificity, I don't know how to describe it, but there's times where that specificity works really well. And I allow something in because I focused on it very specifically. But there's other times where by focusing on it too specifically, maybe I engage my ego, I engage my desire,
It's
my mind's
resistance.
desire to control the universe myself, not from flow and energy, but
Well,
from,
it goes back
control.
to what we were talking about, which is I think I have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can only happen this way,
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
way or this way. Um, And, how's
But I
that
just want to
working?
say, I
Well,
just want
so
to say though,
some things we have resistance with, and some things we don't. So the things that
Mhm.
we have resistance with, I need to back off. The things where I
Right.
have no resistance with, I can be as specific as I want to be so long as it feels good. When it starts to not feel good, then I need to pull back
Mm-hmm.
and let it go. Just go real general
Mm-hmm.
and just be like, yeah, I want that. Because think about it. If let's just use this asparagus for instance. Why don't you have asparagus? And just ranted to my friend at lunch like, what the they had
Yeah.
asparagus last year. Why don't they have them now? I want, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And in my head I'm thinking that was the only way I could have had asparagus. I know this is
Mm.
kind of silly, but let's just use this
No,
for
no, I think it's
instance,
good.
right? And then I would have it would have I could have went down that rabbit hole like driving home. I don't like that
Right.
taste anymore. We do that, right? It's
And the important thing there, I think, is that you still obviously specifically want asparagus.
yeah.
However,
And I didn't get it, and I'm really upset.
right, you're focusing
Just
negatively.
feel my energy.
Yeah, you're feeling bad as you think about how much you
There
want it.
is a
Yeah.
lot of resistance going on here.
Yeah.
It's like I want it. Where are my
Yeah.
hands up? It is stopping.
Yeah.
And I would have been like, I'd have to go to the store. I don't want to go to the store. You know, they should have
Yeah.
had it. That's where I thought it was. I wanted it there. You know, never in my wildest mind would have thought my neighbor across the street would bring me some.
Yeah.
But the universe knows, right? Law of attraction
Yeah.
is always working. So it's like, but because I'd put up that resistance, I think this is the only way I could get it. It just halts everything.
Yeah.
But
It
my
makes me
experience was
wonder.
very different.
It makes me wonder because Mike Dooley talks about the what does he call it? The infernal hows, meaning HOW apostrophe S, where he's like, don't get into the how,
Yeah,
don't start thinking about how the universe
it's going to
has to
deliver it.
bring it to you. Leave that part completely open. So the
Yeah,
trick is if I'm going to focus specifically on something I want, one of the tricks is to focus on it while I'm feeling good because that's what allows it in.
absolutely.
But the
Absolutely. If it
second
feels
part of it,
good, great. If it doesn't,
right.
think about something else.
But the second part of it is focusing on it without getting into how it has to happen.
Well,
And
they always say go from the end result. You have it. How does it feel?
I get that, but you have to stay. The thing is, I've done that, and still, my brain has still
And that's
focused on
where
the
it
end
comes up
result,
with
but also built.
resistance.
But
That's
it has
where
also. Well, I'm not saying I would be in resistance. It's just that I would also think about the how. And so I think there's
But
sort of
that creates resistance because if you're thinking, yeah, but
not initially. It does. I think the key. I think you're right, but I think the key to it is it creates resistance right after you think of the hows because when I think of the hows, what I'm then tuning my mental antenna to is it better happen that way, and I'm hypersensitive to
it better
circumstances
happen. You
in the
hear that, y'all?
world.
It better happen that way, really.
Right. I'm very sensitive. I'm looking for it following that path, that
Yeah,
specific path, and then
yeah.
I'm hyper aware of when it gets off the mark. And I think, like, I live in Los Angeles. I'm one of my many
Because of
things.
the limited thinking. I'm thinking
Yeah.
this is the only way that it can happen. And so therefore it has to happen. And it goes back to what I
Yeah.
was talking about is like, here I'm trying to run the show and this is the only way I think it's
Hmm.
possible that it can happen. And so it's either this or nothing. And if I can't imagine that it can happen this way, then I think I can't have it. And how does that make me feel? I'm screwed
Yeah.
either way. And it's like it was like the oranges, oh yeah, I love them, I like them. And
Hmm.
then they showed up, and I think that
Hmm.
happens all the time with many things, and I'm just not even aware of them.
Hmm.
Um, and it can happen with everything. That's why I was like, some things I have a lot of resistance about. Well,
Hmm.
I don't believe that it can happen any other way other than this way or that way. And it's
But I
like,
think it doesn't even have to be that. I think you're right again, but I think it doesn't even have to be that specific. It doesn't have to be one how. Because, for example, I lived in New York City for 8 years. I moved there to be like a playwright, screenwriter, and then I became a musician with my band. I've lived in Los Angeles for 7 years now. I've been a musician the whole time here. So I know a lot of musicians, actors, directors, everything, actors, whatever. Did I say actors? Um, and one thing that's very common that I've definitely experienced myself many times, and I've experienced it many times in my friends, is that it's not that they had a specific, like, I will move to New York, become an actor, and I'll be successful in 3.5 years. But what they continue to do is they will take events like going to an audition and getting a callback and then not getting the role as, well, I should have gotten that role. And they don't quit being an actor that day, but it becomes this sort of stacking of, like, then they do another audition and they didn't even get a callback. And they say, well, I should have gotten that callback. And then that keeps happening.
Or I didn't. It's not even that I should have or that I didn't. They're seeing evidence that it's not happening.
Right, which is what we're talking about, is like, even though they don't have a specific, like, I have to be a famous actor by this date, they are still in the mode of, it better happen my way, as you put it, and they're observing wherever they're observing and hyper focusing on wherever it doesn't line up the way that they wanted it to, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think it becomes, even though they don't have this specific thing, it becomes over time a stack of stuff. And one day they look at the stack of, it didn't go the way I wanted all these different times, therefore I'm just going to quit. Because I guess it
Or I
just didn't
can't
work out for
have
me or
it.
whatever.
It
Yeah, I
didn't
can't
happen,
have it.
so
I don't deserve it. There's not enough room for
or
me.
it
Whatever.
didn't happen, so it's not going to happen. It
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet, so it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think it's challenging, because I think, but that's the thing. It's like, so bringing it back to synchronicity, how would you, if you, let's say you had a client who was an actor and it had 5 years of that kind of like disappointment, and they'd gotten a few roles, but I mean, 99% of the stuff they went out for, they didn't get. And they were saying, well, how could synchronicity, show me the way?
well, it goes back to what I said every time you bring up this thing about clients. It's like it's a reframing. Like, I can't tell you how many times where when I first meet in the discovery sessions with clients that I offer for free if you're interested in having one, um, that I do want to know what you want and what your ideal is and how you want things to be different. And each week I may bring it up here or there, but what I'm really teaching client week after week, month after month, is how to allow, which is, the tools of appreciation. Are you meditating? What's your self-care look like? Are you playing? Are you having fun? I'm teaching them these things, and then noticing their thinking, and like you were saying, well, I didn't get, okay, so what did you like about it? What did you get out of it? Why do you want it? And they're just reframing the thinking, the attention, what they're doing. And over time, their vibration shifts, their attention shifts, their thinking shifts. Things start to get a little better. Things pop up like, oh, I got this call back. Oh, they're feeling better. Da, da. And then over time, by the time we're done, that list, it starts showing up. And we didn't put a lot of specific time and energy on it, but just the shifting of the energy. They're feeling better more often. They're enjoying their lives more. Their thinking is more in alignment with who and how they really want to be and who they really are.
So that's really interesting to me. So let me ask you to dive even deeper to that. If that was the case, you have this client who's coming to you with this issue. It sounds like there's a couple of different things, like with regard to synchronicity, that you're specifically might do with them. One is just get them to stop trying to manifest things in general, because they're framing.
And then I don't even say that. Like, I don't point that out to them. I just redirect. And so it's something that.
Can you explain what you mean by that, or give an example?
Well, like, I think we were talking about it one other time, and I was like, I don't tell people they're negative. I just redirect them. That's like when I start a session and I'm like, tell me something good. Because if I just say, hi, how are you doing? And go from there, most of us, usually there'll be like 10 things great going on or 5 things. but I'm going to tell you about the
And
one thing
focus about
that's
the
not
negative.
going
Yeah.
great. And that's just something that most of us have practiced most of our lives. We all
Mhm.
do it to some degree. And it's like, how's that serving us? How's that working for us? We don't realize the harm it's actually causing us.
Mhm.
And so it's just that redirecting. I just kind of like talk about
Okay.
stuff that
But
is
would you
working.
ever, can I ask, would you ever, because I've seen this recommended in all sorts of different sort of law of attraction books and films and stuff, would you ever suggest to that person um, trying to focus on something that's got nothing to do with acting, like a feather, just to see if they can manifest a feather, at some point in their day? Or is
I
that
never
like,
really have, no. Although when things do happen, like synchronicity, I will
mm,
point it out to them, like, look. Because a
mm,
lot of times it happens and then we just like shrug it off, like we were talking about earlier, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, wait, pause. I just did this with a client last week. And it's like a couple of things that happened. I'm like, oh, okay, so let's back up for a moment. How were you feeling before all of that occurred?
mm,
And then just stopping and just kind of like marinating it for a while, like
yeah,
really taking that in. Because I think a lot of us, we all have stories of the oranges or the asparagus or the friend or the this or the
right,
that or the car or the money or the job, or we all do, but we don't think about it. We're just thinking
mm,
about the thing that went wrong. I almost got in that accident, or she
mm,
yelled at me, or I almost got whatever. And so I really like, oh, it, you know, let's and she saw like, oh yeah, you're right. Like one of the things I share about, I learned, I experienced this myself, and then I share it, especially with women, clients who are women. I will not, I do my best to not go shopping for clothes when I'm not in a good mood,
mm,
because I will never find something that I
mm,
want or that looks great on me or like.
mm,
However, I've had so many experiences in this one specific time where I was listening to music on my iPod. This is how long ago it was. And I was kind of dancing while I was looking through stuff. I found so many things I loved and liked for great
mm,
prices. And I left there going, and then I went another time when I was like, I had the time to do it, but I wasn't really into it. And I went, I don't find anything. It was a waste of my time.
mm.
And so, you
Yeah, I
know,
was thinking about something. I saw an interview with Al Pacino on YouTube somewhere, and I don't remember what era it was for his career or his age, but he said that his whole approach to auditioning was he's like, well, I'm an actor, and anytime I go into an audition, I've had to prepare. I've had to prepare a character. I've had to prepare, a through line emotionally for that scene. I have to prepare to do it against, sometimes you have these people reading that are reading it with no emotion whatsoever. He's like, but everyone in the room that I'm going to go into is a professional. They're either a director or a casting person or an agent or something like that. So he's like, the whole way he thinks about an audition is it is a performance. Like it's him getting to be an actor.
mm,
He just sets aside the fact that it doesn't pay yet, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But he's like, I am going to have this opportunity to be a professional actor and to do my craft and to enjoy it in front of professionals who also are in that
Mm,
industry, that art,
play.
who want to see good acting and everything. And he
Mm,
views it that way. And I just feel like he has stumbled onto an amazing way of using synchronicity, using the law of attraction. Because I mean, I tried to be a professional actor briefly, and I remember clearly one of the few auditions I went on in the early days. Like I was totally in the wrong headspace. It was
yeah.
all about. I was just thinking, is this audition going to, these people going to
Mm,
accept me or reject me? Am I going to
yeah,
make it as
yeah.
an
Am I
actor? Am I
good
going to fail?
enough? Yeah. Is
Which
this
is
gonna
like,
be it? Yeah.
yeah, if you just think
Cut
about
me
it,
off at the knees.
yeah, if you just think about it the way that Al Pacino claims that he does, it's like every audition is this amazing, positive, feel good experience because he gets to do his thing. And
I
whether
love
he gets
that.
a callback or the role or whatever, or money or
Yeah.
whatever, is just not the point. And
Yeah.
he set it up so that that is a structure
Yeah.
for him to feel like he's doing his craft as an actor,
Yeah.
and what
And he
we know that
is.
he may or
Yeah.
may not is
Yeah.
from an allowing perspective,
Yeah.
he's in the perfect spot to get
Right.
roles
Yeah.
and stuff because he's approaching it. He's feeling good while he's doing it.
Yeah.
He's feeling good about auditioning in general, which many actors struggle with
Yeah.
auditions, and it's understandable.
So I have this experience. You just reminded me. Years ago, I had gotten involved in an organization that I had been in prior to, and they were going to have it was a talent show night. And so when they were going to put on this skit about the organization. And so I volunteered to do it, and we would meet every week to rehearse and such. And most everyone who was in the skit had done acting, either as a hobby, or they've done on play, everything. And so I'm coming in, like, the last time I had done anything like this was in sixth grade at sixth grade camp. And I cracked up the whole time because the guy was a villain and he had put his hand over my mouth, and I just like slobbered on him because I was laughing so hard. And here I'm in my 40s, early mid 40s. So that was a long time in between, right? And so I started getting nervous. I was practicing my lines regularly. I had a really small part. And then it was the day of the talent show. And I think the day before, or that morning, I talked to my granddaughter, and she was already in an arts element, junior high school. She was doing an art school. And I was telling her I was nervous. She goes, well, Nana, a lot of people before they perform, they listen to music to help them calm down. And I'm like, oh, great. So I was like, great idea. So I'm nervous and everything, but I grab my iPod, and all the way over there, I'm listening to music. I sit in my car. I set my intention of how I want it to go. I think I had practiced my lines, and I think I got it down once with no mistakes. And I just said how I wanted to feel afterwards, how I wanted to feel during. And then I get there, and everybody's excited and happy, and they're professionals. And I'm like, wah! But I'm listening to my music, right? And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, I'm going to listen to it till I go on stage. I don't care. I'm just like, and so I'm listening to music, and we're backstage, and everybody's starting to get nervous because we're about going on in like 10 minutes, and everyone who's professional have done this before, they're starting to freak out. And I'm like, oh shit. And I'm just like, okay. And so I went down the hallway, and I'm just like dancing and singing and listening to my song. I'm feeling good. And people are walking by me like, who is this lady? What is she doing? I'm like, I don't give a F. This is what I need to do, right? And I literally listened to the music just before I went up on stage with, everyone. I said my lines perfectly. It was amazing. I was like one of the last people off stage because I was there was this one part at the end where we were all dancing. I got back in my car, and I was like, oh my God, everything that I intended, it happened just like that. And it was so cool.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a great discussion. I've learned a lot. I think I've heard a lot about synchronicity over the years, and I think this is this sort of turned on some light bulbs for me about like what it really means for me, and when it's helpful and when it's not helpful. So pretty cool.
We stay on topic. I feel like we started and then we kind of went.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Well, that's how we stay on topic. That's demonstrated how we actually stay on topic.
And I have not thought about that experience in so long. So thank you for sparking that memory in me and getting to share it here. It was fun. That was cool.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for everybody listening to the audio version on the podcast version. And thank you so much to everybody who's watching us video-wise on YouTube. We really appreciate it. If you feel called to like or subscribe to us, we would really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. We thank you so much for devoting your time. We hope you found something helpful in today's episode, and we will see you on the next episode of Co-Creation Station. Have a great week, everybody.